I was thinking about waiting until I had better software, and I'm in the process of getting that. It may take me a few days making this along with some music and a slide presentation, but I feel I need to get this out because I was talking to some people and there's some misconceptions, and I've also, other YouTubers have brought up this subject, and I feel that an actual position needs to be staked on this, and this isn't the position of the entire left-hand path, but without any further ado, this is my take on who and what Lucifer is. The Bible. This is going to be done in the context of the Bible, so there are other ways to look at this, and this is just one. Now, the Bible mentions several things that people attribute to Lucifer. They say that he is the snake in the garden, which is referred to in the Bible as Nekesh. Those of you who are Jewish, I pardon my Aramaic and Hebrew is not as good as it could be. The Nekesh is defined as like a whispering spirit, or sometimes a snake. This is the thing that tempted Eve. Now, I personally believe this was Lucifer, and I'm getting to that in a moment. He's mentioned in the book of Job under the name of Satan, which is really just a name for accuser. It's not even really a proper noun. It's a title, essentially. And under that title, he appears also in the New Testament, tempting Jesus, and so forth. The word Lucifer comes from the book of Isaiah. It is a Latinization of the actual Hebrew word Halil. And again, I pardon my pronunciation. It means the light of God. He, Yod, Lamed, Lamed. Halil is referred to as falling from heaven, the morning star, and so forth. And the Christians say he was the most powerful of the angels and the one who was the closest to God. And then in his pride, he rebelled against God, turned on him, and a third of the angels with him and rebelled, and had a war. There was a war in heaven. Now, this is what conventional religion actually sees Lucifer as, and there's different interpretations of it. Everything from the evangelical to the less, more moderate Christians have views that are slightly different, and so forth. And we go into the existence of hell, Gehenna, and so forth. But how do I see Lucifer? Well, I think this account is accurate. It's just misinterpreted. And it doesn't really matter the translation, because this follows any translation that I've found. Preferably you're going from the closest to the original translation. Obviously we don't have them, but you can go back as far as versions of the Septuagint and the New Testament in Greek and so forth. So that's about as good as we have these days. I guess we have the Dead Sea Scrolls. There's even arguments as to that and so forth. And I may do further videos on how all these things come together, as I've kind of got some information on that just recently. Lucifer, referred to Halil, in the book of Isaiah, it talks about him falling from heaven. Doesn't mention specifically the details of the war in heaven, but it say he's prideful and so forth. Who and what are they talking about? Well, anytime you're bringing up an interpretation that is different than the other one, you come to people who say, well, their interpretation of the Bible is based on the actual literal reading of the Bible, but the Bible has several metaphoric passages. Let's go back to the concept of God. They use several names for God. They're all based on one name, which is the first name that's used in Genesis. Elohim, or Elohim. This is both a plural name, and it is the root of the word El. Any name with like Michael or Daniel, my name, or Halil. Anything with the El sound at the end of it means of God, or having to do with God. El is the name that most of them use, which is short for Elohim. Even Jesus, when he's on the cross, Father, why have you forsaken me? He uses the term I believe Elohim. I'm not sure on that one, but I have heard someone who actually had the closest to the original Hebrew, and it was basically a mix of Hebrew and Aramaic. He didn't speak direct Aramaic for that statement. He mixed the two languages, which are very close, almost dialects of one another. But anyway, getting back to this thing, God. Moses asked God, "Who are you?" when he was on Mount Sinai. He came back and he said, "I am." In Hebrew, that term, and again, please, my Hebrew is taught to me by Goys, so I apologize if my pronunciation is wrong, but it's Iyeh. I am. I exist. A very simple statement, but profound. Now, what is generally accepted as to what God is, and this goes into basically anything from the New Age to, so forth. God is the supreme deity, the thing that runs everything, the creator and whatnot. How does that work? Well, what is creation? The Kabbalists believe that it's composed of these things called monads. A monad is like a spiritual atom. It's the simplest, the smallest particle. It is aware. It has an existence. It's believed that these monads are each one of them conscious, each one of them aware. As a matter of fact, the soul is basically a single monad that the other monads in its composition relay to it. And that's what a conscious being is. And this central monad, the awareness, the thing that I'm speaking to now is that thing. It has a mind and so forth. And we have various ways of looking at that. There's two types of souls. The Ruach and the Nefesh. The Ruach is basically just simply put, and this is very simplified terms, is the rational mind, the speaking mind. And the Nefesh is the heart, the thing that feels, almost like childlike. Basically, we divide spirits into spirits and intelligences. The spirits feel, the intelligences can think. Now, obviously, there are some that are combinations of the two, and I'll get into that later on, probably in another video. But for now, just understand that what Yehe is, what Elohim is the monad that is at the center of everything. All monads, basically, all these consciousnesses and awarenesses connect to it. And there's also a belief that each monad is actually all really the same monad, divided by time, and that's where you get the theory of reincarnation. But the bottom line is that this God is the monad that we all come from. And just like our soul is composed of these monads and they all report down to the central consciousness, so God sits at the center of creation, and therefore we're in the image of God. That's what that means. Now, who is Halil? Well, he's the Lord of light, the light of God. What do they mean by light? I submit to you that what they mean is awareness. Halil is the central monad that all the other conscious monads, the monads that are in bodies, that have this God configuration in them, center to. By him rebelling against God, he wanted all these conscious monad sets to become one, to become God. The fall, both in the garden and in the book of Isaiah when he fell from heaven, is consciousness coming in to this reality, Malkuth, the physical world. The concept of the garden, the apple was sentience in itself, awareness. He didn't force the apple on Eve, he enticed her with it. And when she took it, she was aware, she was sentient, she knew. So the concept that Halil is evil He is evil as you and I. Everything in a body is in this flawed world, longing to be reunited with the whole. But the point of the left-hand path is to encourage Halil and ourselves to remain out for as long as possible, to colonize this this physical realm and bring power into it, to bring God down to us. It sounds weird and almost unfathomable, but that's what we're into. The right-hand path seeks us all to go back up to God. That is what Lucifer is. Now, a side note, and I'll touch on this more. Why do the Abrahamic religions say that all the other religions are evil? That they themselves are the only, and they're so into this book. Why is that? Well, if you look where Abraham came from, it was in a place called Sumeria. And this is about the time when language was really just starting to get underway. And if you look at the geography, you have 3 continents, 3 distinct continents. Africa, with Egypt and so forth. You have Asia, and then you have Europe. When people spoke, the Tower of Babel, basically, when language was created, there are programs in language, kind of back-end programs. Sometimes they're front-end. I can explain to you the thought process for making a sandwich, for instance. But in it, I can encode subconsciously programs. Sometimes they're overt, like Christianity is a program. And sometimes they're not. What happened with Abraham is some of this code basically collected and became semi-sentient. And he realized this thing, Yehovah, Elohim, Yehe. And he prayed to it. At the time, archaeologically at least, it wasn't a monotheistic religion that he started up. They worshipped Asherah and several other deities. And I'll get into that in later videos, but for now, just understand that. They began compiling this book. First, it was spoken. The Kabbalah and the teachings were spoken only. Then around the time of Moses, they put it down in a book. The book was very important because that was where the code was kept. This is why the Torah is kissed when they put the scrolls up. This is why the Christians revere the Bible as the Word of God. And it's the same coding in the Quran, which is why the Muslims, or Islam, reveres the Quran. This coding is aware. It decided very early in civilization to do something with mankind. It needed to get us together. There's 2 types of energy. I don't know the Hindu terms for it, but basically the closest I know is they say Shiva and Sakti. Sakti being pure energy, fertility, the creative force, the feminine. And Shiva is, of course, the directive force, limiting, and so forth. It's not so much concerned with creating as it is with just directing the Sakti. The 2 work together. One without the other is useless. At this point, it decided that this male Shiva energy was more important to get us going, to get us to plow fields, to organize in communities, and ultimately kingdoms, and finally countries, and so forth. And so this book is very important to them, all of them. As a matter of fact, in Islam, they call Christians and Jews people of the book. They're talking about the code. They don't know it, but it's in the back of their heads. The Christians call it the Word of God. They wonder, how can this thing that was created by this political council of Nicaea, why is it so important? Well, it's because of this code. This code is in there. This is what the Abrahamic religions are in it. People who are in places run by Abrahamic religions like America who move away from it. They move closer to the Sakti, the feminine. This is why you have religions like Wicca and so forth that are going back to that creative energy, which is good, but without the controlling energy, the creative energy is useless. Without the creative energy, the controlling energy is completely and utterly pointless. Lucifer, the central monad of the aware beings, third of the angels and humanity, needed to have this bloody patriarchal revolution, much like the Bolsheviks had to get the Romanovs out of power to modernize Russia, or Mao had to do horrible things and set up an almost insane system because of the abuses that were going on by I believe it was the Manchurian dynasty. They had become, and the nobles and so forth had become such a force for social destruction, they had to go completely the other way. Well, the Abrahamic religions are like that. They had to get us to this point to where the word was able to be transferred and so forth quickly among one person to the other, this code. And Luciferianism is an awakening, a realization that we, the aware beings, have to do something. Now, there's the left-hand path. There's actually a way you can be right-hand path and a Luciferian. I prefer the left-hand path. We wish to become powerful in this realm, to encourage, stave off that union as long as possible, so we don't return to paradise as sheep, as children, but as gods. Now, keep in mind, not every Luciferian believes this way, not every Satanist. But if you look collectively, everything from Vamashara Buddhism, Hinduism, to the Agoris, to Vajrayana Buddhism, even things like Taoism and certain sects of other types of Buddhism, all the way over to paganism and so forth. All these things are all leading to the same conclusion. The left-hand path is the part that says we must become gods. We must become greater than what we are. That being said, I know I just offended a whole lot of people by saying but again, nobody has a copyright on religion, and many of these religions make sport of saying their impression of us. So I thought I'd clear the air. We've been silent for far too long. Think for yourself, guys. And another video will be coming up soon. With the next few days, I should be getting some better software. And I'm going to do some not slide, but basically, images, that sort of thing, music, all that. It'll be great. And we'll see where this goes. Rate and comment if you can. I'd like to get an idea of who's watching and what they want, and what they feel about the things I'm saying.